It isn't very often that someone goes on a heater quite as insane as this one. Three $50,000 wins in 2 weeks and close to $500,000 in tournament wins in under 2 months. But that's exactly what Martin did and is still doing with the help of the stochastic Sims tools. So naturally, after his ninth major tournament win in as many weeks, I figured it was finally time to reach out to Martin, see if he'd sit down with us and possibly share some insights and give us a peek behind the curtain into how he's been having such insane success in the DFS streets. Unfortunately for us, that's exactly what he did. So I think you guys will find this video really valuable as Martin shares a ton of insightful information and really doesn't hold back as far as his lineup building process goes. So of course, thanks to him for doing this and to you guys for watching. Enjoy. So Martin, I really appreciate you joining us. I think a lot of people will appreciate this and hopefully gain something valuable from it.
Thank you for having me, Rafi. My pleasure being here.
Yeah, man. So it's funny because the first time, you and I were introduced was a couple of months ago. When I run the strategy shows, I tell people, if you want to try the tools out, hit me up. I'll get you, I'll DM me and I'll grab you a code to get in because we want people to use these tools and fall in love with them. And you did that. And I want to get into your background, but I just think it's funny how this worked. I think 1 or 2 days later, you took down a tournament for like 50 grand. And then what was it? A couple days after that, you finished third for another 25K. And the wave hasn't crashed yet.
Yeah, exactly. I reached out 2 days later. I was banking. I messaged you about it, and it hasn't really stopped. So yeah, kudos to the tools, I guess.
Well, you as well, because while the tools obviously are powerful, you still have to have some input. You're doing something. So we'll get into that. But I was curious, your background in DFS. When you and I had spoke a couple of days ago setting this interview up, you had mentioned that you've been playing DFS for a long time. You've lived in America now for, you said, 10 years. But the funny thing is, like, that's when DFS first started coming onto the scene. So that's what I'm like. For anyone that hasn't noticed yet, maybe you don't hear well, clearly a French accent with Martin coming over to America. How did you jump into the DFS game? Because I would imagine in France, you don't have like a bustling DFS scene as we did, like really, I should say burgeoning DFS scene as it was coming up huge early in those years.
Yeah, and still not actually in France. It's still, I'm surprised that they don't have much offer on DFS. They have sports betting and everything, but no DFS or not much at all. Look, I moved in Boston in 2015 and I started to play DFS because I always loved the NFL. So I was watching the games and I figured, hey, that should be fun. And I always loved games and being very competitive about understanding all the little adjustments I can make to finish first, right? I always love game theory. So DFS was right down my alley, if I can say. So I played for a long time, super small stakes, mostly on the NFL. And then along the years, I've seen like optimizer come up and then simulators and then like more and more communities and data and the field getting much sharper than it was back then. But yeah, that's kind of my background there.
What kind of game theory were you into prior? I mean, I assume just based on your Twitter handle that you were a poker player as well.
Yeah, I played poker since the origin of the online poker boom. So, when I was a student back then, that's how I was making a side cash. And then later on, when I moved in the US, I played quite a lot of live poker. I played the World Series a few times. So, yeah, and before that, game theory and, being in the nitty gritty and the nerdy stuff, I always loved. Like I was trying to find the best strategies to beat Monopoly at the kitchen table when I was a kid. So that's
Sports betting too, I assume, right?
Yeah, so it became legal in Massachusetts early last year or the year before. I forgot exactly the date, but basically, I was really excited when it started. And then 6 months later, I was limited to like pennies on most of the operators. So I figured, well, I guess I will stop here. And so I didn't bet anything since October last year. And that's why I got a lot more seriously into DFS like beginning of 2025 because I figured, well, I was doing betting before, I cannot do it anymore. So let's just use that energy to this now.
Yeah, that's the part nobody tells you, is that the sports books don't want you to win. And if you do
True.
win, they'll show you the door, but you can still get them for a good amount before they do.
Yeah.
Were you using, and I want to get to kind of your experience with the Sims tools. I'm sure everyone's curious on how you've had such remarkable success in honestly, and I don't know your previous success as far as DFS is concerned. I know you said you played some smaller stakes. I would assume that this current run that you've been on, right, of success is it fair to say the best run you've ever been on?
Yeah, and mostly because of volume. Anybody can have a high volume, right? But what's difficult to do is to have high volume without compromising the quality of your lineups. And this is exactly what the Sims helped me do, because before I had lots of good data, good communities, good tools as well. Somewhat like there are good optimizers that exist out there, and I would use this, but um, optimizers, you end up having very much like big sets of lineups that are optimal, so you don't gain like much leverage against the field, because everybody who is fairly sharp will play the same way. And simulator, that's where really you can get to the okay. You have good data, you put that in the sims, and it creates leverage versus the field, so you can have high volume with high quality in terms of lineup. And so, therefore, yes, that's my best heater so far, because I have the tools and the data.
Now, did you have experience with Sims prior to this, or were you using like, I mean, there's a lot, like you said, a lot of optimizers out there. Were you using, projections and ownership and feeding them into an optimizer?
Yeah, that's what I was doing, or I was hand building a lot. So I was much lower volume, but I wanted to focus on the quality of the lineups, making sure that it has a return on investment that is highly positive. So lots of hand builds. It was the first sims that I was using very, very seriously.
Hey, when you guys are ready to dive in and start using the same tools Martin's using over at stochastic.com, use promo code HEATER33 and your first payment on any weekly or monthly subscription is 33% off. So let's get into the fun stuff. Then you use the Sims tool. Are the stochastic Sims specifically the first Sims you have used?
Yeah, and I watched a lot of videos on what exists on the market, so I'm quite familiar with all the products, but truly, stochastic sims were the first I was using extensively. Yeah.
All right. And I think it's fair to say the learning curve for you wasn't significant. You understand DFS, you understand all of that. So when you signed up, what was it? Because, I mean, obviously it takes some luck to just go and bink, a tournament
For
a couple
sure.
days. Yeah, sure. But it also takes you doing the right thing. It's a combination of both. We all know that. Obviously, some people will luck box the Millie with the most insane lineup. If you say you love NFL, you've seen some of those lineups. But when you went in, and I'm obviously not asking you to, like I said, divulge any of your like secrets. But when you go into the Sims, I know you make some adjustments. Is there anything specifically that you're looking at? And is there anything that you don't want to change too much, because then you're just going to wipe out everything that's actually, profitable about it?
Yeah, I think every single slate, no matter the sport or the time of the day, is kind of a puzzle. And the first thing I do is you have to figure out, okay, where is my edge going to be? How do I want to attack this? And already having the sims and very good data is clearly an edge, right? But at the end of the day, in this community, in Stochastic, everybody has this tool and this data, and then you have the competitors who similarly have something that is like fairly high quality. So you have to ask yourself, which I do every time, what's going to be my own edge so I can separate from the field? And so every single slate, you can look at different things. For example, the golf slate that I destroyed because I banked on the two biggest tournaments with a different lineup. That was very sick.
Showdown
That,
tournament.
yeah,
Showdown. Yeah.
yeah. On that day, what I wanted was, okay, what's going to be my edge? Okay, I want the sims. I think the projections are good. But on top of that, I want to trim the player pool significantly to remove all the guys who are going to go from like 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. because the weather was going to be bad. So you apply a weather wave edge on top of good data and good tools. And at the end, you get very, very unique pool of lineup, basically. That's one example, but honestly, there are just so many different ways to skin a
All right.
cat.
So give me an example then maybe of something that's worked for you in the past for baseball, like an ed. Obviously there's weather edges, but it's not nearly as significant
Yeah.
because you're just isolating a single game oftentimes. Whereas, like you said, with golf, you can isolate an entire wave of tee times.
Yeah.
What would be an example of like an MLB edge? Obviously, again, without giving too much away, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here.
Well, sometimes you will notice that the sims go crazy about one pitcher or one stack, and they just go like way over the field on. So that's typically something I pay attention to, and the contest size and the buy-ins matter. So, for example, I might go like way over on the pitcher in the lotto, like in the $15 and the $18, because usually people will be too low on this. But if you enter another set of lineup in the higher buy-ins, like the 333 or the 555, then you can bet that the ownership of those guys, of those stacks, of those pitchers are going to be way higher. So in those, I would tend to like either fade them or be way under. So it's an interesting way to balance your entire portfolio depending on the contest that you enter. That's one of the things I pay attention to. Another one is, depending on the contest as well, how do you want to structure your roster? Do you want a 5-man stack at all costs? Do you want a 4-4? Would you consider like 2-2-2 and those kind of crazy things? And so same thing, you can call some shots depending on the size of the contest. If it's a very big lotto with 50,000 entrants, I would allow like crazy stuff, like 2-2-2s maybe, sometimes, not always. But if it's the one with 500 players entering the contest, I would just restrict it like crazy to like 5-man stack. And you have to look at historical data. Like, for example, you know that over the past 2 years, 5-2-1s won 37% of the time, which is like way higher than any other build, even higher than 5-3s. So these are the kind of historical data and post contest that I look at to make more informed decisions, you could say. So that's just a few examples.
Great examples. Yeah. And it's the way to be able to take a tool like The Sims, manipulate it without compromising the purpose of it. And I tell people, you've tuned into the strategy show, and you're a perfect mouthpiece for this, understanding and better than seemingly anyone from our short conversation here. You can take The Sims and it is possible, if you make too many insane adjustments, you're not using them for the purpose that they're there for. Then you're kind of just trying to use them as an optimizer, and you're defeating the purpose. But what you're saying is find an edge and then let the Sims do the rest of the work.
Exactly. That's how I use it. It's always step one, what is going to be the edge without even looking at the Sims and the number. Step two, look at what they are spitting out. And step three, do micro adjustments. But you said very well during your show. You are saying like, hey, let's see, if I do like plus or minus 5% or 10% on that guy, is it going to change drastically? Or if it doesn't change anything, don't go to minus 20, minus 30, minus 40, because then you break everything.
Exactly right. Then you're just forcing something in. Yeah. It's an interesting way to look at it. Hey, before we go, I always ask people this because especially game theory guys like yourself, are you a solving the puzzle type guy, game theory guy, and a sports fan? Or did just wanting to be able to solve these type of puzzles like DFS get you in to following sports? Or is it always the combination of two, and this is just like the perfect romance?
Depends of the sports. If you tell me NFL, big time NFL fan and puzzle fan. If you give me some other sports, I don't like them as much, but the game theory and the puzzle is making it very, very fun. So depends.
Do you have an NFL team?
Not in particular. I just like a good game, very high scoring, please.
Anyway, Martin, appreciate you very much, man. This is super. I think a lot of people are really going to enjoy this and benefit from it. And best of luck at keeping this heater alive, man. Let's see how far we can take it.
Yeah, let's try it. I'll keep you posted. Thank you, Rafi, for having me.
Yeah, man. Thanks for watching, guys.